Afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. We're just going to run through a few bits of information here today. Obviously, this webinar is about making the most of the National Fostering Campaign, which is due to be released in line with Foster Care Fortnight in May. We don't actually have the details of the national campaign in terms of the media plan, the media buying at CAN. I don't know if anybody from a service level have got that either at the moment, but we can obviously look at the information that we do have and the information that has come out to everybody that we have seen and talk about it in more general terms. We would be able to sort of think about search and the media mix and a response to that. If we have the details and when it comes out, we can do a bit more sort of commentary on that at the moment. So just a bit of a caveat that we don't have that information either, and I don't think service level do either. So just needed to say that in advance of this webinar. And so really, I suppose the point of this webinar is, with that in mind, is that we just wanted to think about a few tips and tricks, really, based on our own experience of doing similar work south of the border, how to capture the interest that's generated by the national campaign. It's going to be quite a high level campaign, broadcast, radio, and other bits of media are planned in, so I believe. So that will, we know, capture the interest of people that might be considering foster care. Sorry, John, just go back, thanks. Recruitment. And so this really is just a bit of a benefit of our experience and working on similar bits of information on how to make the most of it, really, at a local level. So we're interested at helping you at a local level, what you can do with the content and the information when you get it. We have a friend here, Dan Hare, who's from eShop, and he's going to go into how we nurture inquiries via email. So we know that in foster care recruitment, this is a long game. Recruitment will take much longer than an advert on the telly or on search or anywhere else. Dan, we've worked with for a long time, direct email solution, just really sort of having a look at what works and what doesn't work in terms of content, in terms of just the funnel, really, and the marketing procedure around use of direct email. Super helpful, practical information. So we're super glad to have Dan here today as part of this webinar, something that we spoke about part one of our nurturing webinar. So just bringing that information to you as we promised for the last time. And then, as always, these webinars for us, always really, really informal. It's often a quiet group, but if you want to use the question and answer in the chat, put anything in there. Obviously, after the webinar, if you want to speak to me or John directly, if you want to speak within the group, totally free to come and speak to us about anything, pick up anything that's come up in the session today. Thanks, John. So for those on the call who haven't been on one of our webinars before, just a very quick recap who we are at CAN. We are a digital agency. In the main, we do work across all media buying sectors, so out of home, but our expertise is particularly in use of digital. We work exclusively with public sector organisations. We don't work with commercial organisations across the country. The majority of CAN staff have a public sector background, so we absolutely understand what it's like to work in public sector. We've done it ourselves. We've got the T-shirts. We understand procurement hell. We understand what politically sometimes in a council environment, what that means and the decision making that has to go into that. We run campaigns primarily digital, just mentioned that, and we have been working on fostering campaigns and fostering recruitment campaigns for many, many years now, for dozens of councils across the country, and we have started to work much more now in Scotland, and just bringing that expertise from the years that we have been working in this area. And we like to think of ourselves as folk who have got a bit more expert sort of background in this particular type of campaign, I guess. Thanks, John. So who am I? Who are we? My background is in comms. I'm a CIPR chartered practitioner, which means for me that I'm massively invested in creating information that can be measured. I'm very keen that what we do, we can track it, we can measure it, and we can show our workings, I suppose. We can show our sums to SMT and show how the work has actually achieved our objectives. I'm very keen on doing that. Before CAN, I worked in healthcare comms for over 21 years now, pretty much in healthcare, child health, mental health, sexual health, but mostly my experience is in youth health related content. And I'm a dedicated resource for Scotland. I live in Edinburgh, I've worked in Scotland throughout my career, so very much connected into what's happening in policy in Scotland, follow the promise, follow what's, what you'll be needing to do in terms of the information that is coming down from Scottish Government. I have a particular interest in accessible and inclusive comms outputs, so I've written research on that. So I'm very keen that the information and the user experience is particularly useful for all audiences. So I bring that to the party. Thanks, John. I'll pass to John to introduce himself.
My name's John Cooper. I'm the fostering recruitment specialist at CAN. Prior to working with CAN, I'd worked in fostering recruitment at 3 different councils, and I've led the fostering hub since 2021, which is basically information sharing about fostering recruitment between councils, running webinars like that sort of thing. And I have the privilege of working closely with lots of councils to help them recruit more foster carers and get better at what they do. Thanks, Leanne.
Brilliant. So what we're doing in Scotland really is replicating what we've been doing south of the border. We're just trying to build a bit of a hub, I guess, with an emphasis on use of digital, use of effective digital. So if you're new to our fostering recruitment webinars, this is a place where we share knowledge. It's only for local authorities. We only work with local authorities. So it really is to just support folk at a local level for the use of digital and give a bit of expert advice to make their end-to-end process smoother and more effective. We want to just help you recruit more foster carers. We want to help you bring down marketing spend per approval, and we can show you how we do that and ways to do that. And we really do believe that council fostering services very much have the potential to succeed in quite a difficult market, alongside private provision in Scotland. So really that's what we're here to sort of support, and just building at the moment a bit of a community of practice with an emphasis on use of digital. I've said it just before, but use the chat for any questions, comments, ideas, anything that you want to bring up in this session. We don't tend to invite questions as we go through. We can if you want to, just for time and to give Dan his time for his presentation, because there's loads of useful information in that. So onto the National Fostering Campaign. I've mentioned at the top of the chat there, we don't have like the media mix and exactly what channels are going to be used. We've got a fair idea though, because there is only so many channels you can actually use. But as we all know, at this point, it's been commissioned by the Scottish Government. We have been not working formally in partnership with the Scottish Government, but very much linked in to try and, I suppose, support you as foster care frontline workers to just use this opportunity and use digital tools to make the most of the activity, I guess. So a kind of an informal partnership, if you will, and around that, just for you to like do well with it, I guess. And then so we know that it'll be running for several weeks, including Foster Care Fortnight. It's always a really busy time in that time in a digital sense. The call to action will direct interest to the Foster Network phone line, and I think we all know that there's a central government website or page where then there's a service picker for individual councils. For the folk that we're already working with, they will direct to the landing pages that CAN set up for these individual councils if they're using a CAN landing page website. So the call to action then, so those will be calling the phone line, will be linked with the local council as we understand it. The government website provides link to the counselling and fostering pages via the service picker. But we know that when you've got this activity, sort of any kind of broadcast, if it's radio, the people are also likely to search online about fostering. They might not necessarily follow the actual call to action that is on the creative content. We know that they'll just go fostering in at my council or in your area, and using your particular area. So the session really will look at how to maximise on a local level this activity is what the point of this session is. For us, we'll always say this, the online journey is very, very important. So how easy it is to actually sort of capture the maximum number of inquiries. It's so the campaign is super important and mega useful at a local level, but we know that the work starts after that. We know that, as I've said earlier, it's a long-term process for foster care recruitment with a complex number of considerations and decisions within that. So really thinking about how people come to your space online to be able to actually get in touch with you in whatever way they're getting in touch with you to proceed through the pathway to panel is as important as any ad, really, and that's what we're here to explain and sort of support. So I'll pass over to John now. He's going to take you through a few of the specifics around use of search and with the context of the national campaign front and centre. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Leanne. Yeah, so whenever we approach anything to do with fostering recruitment, we always try and do it from the perspective of somebody a potential foster carer, and what it's like being in their shoes. Like, how do they behave? What do they encounter? How do they behave when they encounter that? And what I mean by that is, if they're thinking of fostering, what are their sources of information? Where do they go for information? What's that information like when it's presented to them? And how do they react when they're presented with different information or different websites or different adverts and that sort of thing. So that's what is like the fundamental approach that we take for everything to do with fostering recruitment. So how best do you capture their interest? Now, the lowest hanging fruit, as Leanne explained there, is around online searching, particularly Google search ads, Bing search ads as well. They're a sort of a very small percentage of the search ads marketplace. So it's predominantly Google, but Bing is useful as well. And it's the lowest hanging fruit because people are sort of waving a flag saying, I'm interested in fostering, by going onto Google and searching something around fostering for more information. If you've got search ads set up well, your ad will appear in front of them when they do a search. If they click on your ad, they're clicking through to your website, and then hopefully you'll be able to capture the inquiry there. It's the most cost-effective way of recruiting foster carers that we've found. We've tried loads of different things, and the cost per actual approved carer is from Google search ads is the cheapest of any method of advertising you can do. We always look at what IFAs do because generally they're kind of, well, they're driven by financial constraints more than councils are, because if they don't have foster carers, they don't exist because they've got no source of income. So we always look at what they do because they tend to innovate a lot more than councils do. They're able to do that because there's much smaller organisations and so on. And like I say, there's that financial drive for them to do it. Anywhere in the country where you search for fostering in Google, you'll be presented with search ads like the example there on the left. I'm sure you'd be familiar with where you got the sponsored bit there, and they're pushed to the top of the page. Now, the number of the ads varies depending on what part of the country you're in. There tend to be more of them in areas of high population density. And as an example, Fife's got 9 IFAs running search ads in their area. Fife's a mixture of rural and quite a few urban areas as well. So that gives you an idea of the number of people competing for a click from someone that's interested in fostering. And the key thing is don't do the work for them. If you don't have search ads set up to capture that interest, the clicks will go to the IFAs. The national campaign is going to encourage people to search for fostering, and we know that the IFAs are sitting there rubbing their hands together at the moment because it's a really high profile campaign. Hopefully it'll generate lots and lots of interest in fostering that will lead to lots and lots of people going online to search for more information, and the IFAs will be there just ready to capture those clicks. So like I say, make sure you've got some sort of search ads set them up properly, otherwise the IFAs will get all that interest that's intended for local authorities, and that's going to cost you more in the long run in terms of placements and so on. The easiest way I could think of to illustrate this is, instead of low-hanging fruit, the sort of high-level campaign activity is the fruit that's a bit higher up here. So it's more effort and so on to sort of cut it down and get to the fruit. But what happens is these are the IFA search ads that just take that interest. So there's high-level stuff going on, and unless you've got the search ads set up on the ground, the IFAs are just going to nick it all. So hopefully that sort of helps to illustrate the point. So again, going back to keeping ourselves in the shoes of foster carers and how do they behave, not how we'd like them to behave or how we think they behave, but how they actually behave. So what we do is when we look at search campaigns, we compile all the searches across every council in the country that runs search ads, that will run for people, and we look at there's common themes of searches that come out. The most common one is allowances and payments. By far the most common search is around payments, allowances, how much do you earn as a foster carer, that sort of thing. Lots of generic terms, obviously, criteria, can I foster if, or can I, how do I foster if I don't have a spare bedroom, or these kinds of things around the criteria. Stuff around types of fostering, lots of searches for the names of IFAs that people are aware of, and stuff around support and training. And then another common one is like the geographical place names of the area they're in, i.e. Foster in Falkirk, Foster Fife, wherever. And the way to sort of get the maximum impact from doing search ads is to create groups of search ads that mirror the language used and mirror what people are actually searching for, and reflecting it as closely as possible, and not what I call council speak, which is typically sort of like everyday language we use in the realm of recruiting foster carers. That's like completely makes sense to us because we use it every day and we've done so for years, but the general public may not know what we're talking about. So as an example, fostering fees, everyone on this call probably knows what that means, but the general public don't, and they will search for pay, salary, what you earn, how much do you make, that kind of thing. So that's what you need to put in your ads to reflect what they've searched for. And Google's much more likely then to show your ad, and it's much more likely to get clicked on. I know that some councils prefer to call their foster carers. Some of them call them foster parents, but the general public, again, they search for both terms. So you need to make sure that your ads are set up to contain both terms. Again, Google will show your ad more if you've got more kind of variety in there like that, and you're much more likely to get it clicked on as well and get them through to your website. Getting the clicks to your site is one thing, but then where you send them to is really important as well. So I've seen some council campaigns where they do a lot of really good search ads, but they send them all just to like their fostering homepage, which is fine to a point, but it means that people are then having to hunt around for exactly what they've searched for. So if someone has searched for how much do you earn as a foster carer, they click on the ad, they land on the homepage, they're then scrolling up and down looking for a link. And the more you do that, the less people will stick on your website. They'll just go straight back to Google, click on a result, another result, which would probably be from an IFA, and then you may have lost them forever then. So make sure you search ads link to specific pages for each of those topics that we identified. Make sure the content's relevant and so on. So if you're clicking through from an ad about payments, make sure the page talks about payments and you answer their questions straight up front, and then you've got much more chance of them being engaged. Don't have loads of text on your pages. Again, this is a difference between IFA pages and council pages that we see a lot, is that IFA pages tend to have loads of colour, images, video, not loads of text. And sometimes that's the reverse for councils. So just think about it from your own point of view when you click through onto something. If you see like reams and reams and reams of text, do you want to read on, or do you think, I'll click back to Google, and then you land on a page which has got things in nice little snippets in colour, with images and that sort of thing to break it all up. And that's where the battle's won and lost, really, in terms of encouraging someone to actually make an inquiry. So mapping what people search for to the pages, it's pretty straightforward, really, as you can see there. Generic stuff, finances for allowances and payments, criteria, types of fostering. Transferring is a really important one, because of the lowest hanging fruit, they are the lowest hanging fruit. If you can convert somebody who's already an approved foster carer, who's already been through the process, doesn't need educating, just literally needs transferring into your service so they can look after children, that's a really key strategy. So when people are searching for the names of IFAs, the ads that we put up there link them through to the transfer to us page, because if somebody is with an IFA and then they're looking up other IFAs thinking they might want to transfer to them, if you can intercept that and send them to you first, sell the benefits of fostering with your service, you've got much more chance of converting them. Support and training, again, straightforward. And then where people are searching for, foster in Edinburgh, foster in Glasgow, whatever, send them again to your generic foster with us homepage. Got some examples here of pages that Falkirk are running where their search ads go to. So like I say, there's colour there, there's not too much text, there's images, there's lots of buttons to encourage them to inquire. And when you've got somebody that clicks on the button to inquire, make sure your contact form is as simple and straightforward and as appealing looking as possible. We see lots of councils where they've got a good website set up, and then the contact form is the weakest link in the chain. It absolutely throttles inquiries. And where you can make changes to the design to make it as sleek as possible, you get massive increases in conversions. In some cases, much like 10 times as many inquiries for the same. If you get like 1,000 clicks a month, you might get, let's say, 2 or 3 of those convert into an inquiry. With a really good contact form, you can get 20, 30, 40 with exactly the same number of clicks coming through. So it really does make a massive difference. On the form, ask for the bare minimum details. Don't ever ask for the date of birth, because that puts off about 90% of people. When we've done like before and after tests with forms with the date of birth on and after, it's about 10 times as many people will inquire if you don't ask for the date of birth, because at this stage it's a lot to ask for. They're happy to share the name, their phone number, their email address and their postcode, but date of birth is just one step beyond for some people. And it's really important to give potential foster carers choice of what they want from you. Don't channel them down the route of just a callback. So you can see the examples here. One of the forms is like run on the left hand side here, the blue one. That's all on one page, whereas the ones on the right here, the sort of the red coloured ones, these go across a couple of pages. So you fill a couple of bits in, click the next button, bit more, next, and then you throw straight through to submit. And when you're asking for what people want, we've done loads of tests on what generates the most inquiries, and it's always put at the top, email and information pack. Always ask them what they want first before you ask for any details, and more people will actually fill it in. About 75% of people that submit the forms across all the sites that we run, they only ask for an information pack, because at this stage that's all they want. They don't want to engage much. They don't really want to be having phone conversations this early. So it's really important you give it that option, as well as, a callback and then stuff about information events as well. But it's really important not to just say, get in touch and we'll ring you, because that puts a lot of people off. And if you think of like when you're searching for a holiday, like my favorite place is Greek Islands. So if I'm searching for Greek Islands, a load of ads will come up, and I'm much more likely to click on one that talks about Greek Islands and it's really got specific and relevant content in the ad, rather than a generic ad that just talks about European holidays in the sun, whatever. It's like, no, I've searched for Greek Islands. I want a site that says Greek Islands. And then when I've clicked through, the landing pages go on to, much more likely to stay on a site that's, when you land on it, it's what I've searched for. It's got nice images, and then the form, again, similar to the contact form, that's nice and easy and simple to use. I hate the forms on a lot of travel websites where you can't sort of filter very easily. So the ones I tend to book holidays on are the ones where you filter dates, airports, destinations really easily. I'm much more likely to book holiday with them. So just like try and relate that to the experience of a potential foster carer. thinking about fostering, thinking about asking for more information or taking the next step or whatever, and just bear that in mind. Very few inquiries are going to be ready to go when they make an inquiry, and we know this from all the services we work with. The vast majority of people that inquire don't apply within a year or even 2 years. You know, they can take 4, 5, 10 years sometimes to consider fostering before they're actually in a position to actually apply and start an assessment. So the best thing to do is keep conversations going with those people who are still researching, educate them about fostering, bust the myths, sell your service brand, because that's what you are. You're competing with IFAs and other local authorities in your area. And if nothing else, even if they never foster for you, if you've educated them and busted myths and all that sort of thing, when they're talking with their friends and family who may also be considering fostering, they can counteract those negative or untrue kind of myths around fostering, and they do the work for you. So it's really important that you do that. And the best way I can think of to illustrate this is like a funnel of people in your area who could potentially become foster carers. So you've got all the people at the top of the funnel who are aware of fostering. Some of them are considering fostering. Some of them are actively researching fostering, going online, talking to people, whatever, getting information from various sources. And then you've got the ones who've made contact. And in an ideal world, everybody would follow this funnel down from the top to the bottom. So they become aware, they think about it for a while, think, oh, right, yeah, I'm going to do my research now. And they would only make contact when they're absolutely in a position ready to apply. But we know that doesn't happen. You get people who are considering fostering, and they'll still get in touch and make an inquiry because they want more info or they've got some questions or whatever, which is great, but they're still a way off from actually making an application. And then you get people who like only recently been made aware, and hopefully the national campaign will put loads more people in this top part of the awareness of fostering with your service. And they might jump straight to making an inquiry, even though, like I say, they'll be a while off making an application. So again, looking at what the IFAs do, how do they handle their inquiries? Well, they want to recruit as many carers as they can, and they nurture their inquiries for as long as they can, and that massively increases the chance of applications. Like I say, it might be a year down the line, might be 2 years down the line, might be 5 years down the line, but if they get people through the door eventually, that's what they need to do, and that's what councils need to do as well. And they don't invest in anything if it doesn't pay off for them, but we know that they do invest heavily in nurturing. Councils can do exactly the same thing, but they can do it better because you've got all the cards, you're local, you've got local stories. Most of the IFAs tend to be national or even kind of over broad regions where you can be hyper local in how you nurture your inquiry and communicate with them and the information you provide them and so on. So yeah, like I said, make sure you nurture them as well. Any of those that go quiet, because a lot of them do go quiet, make sure you follow up, educate them. An email's the easiest way to do this, which we're going to find out from Dan very shortly. It's inexpensive, it's easy to set up and run in the background. You don't have to constantly monitor it and so on. And it's measurable as well, so you can test different content and so on. And it delivers results. We've seen loads of councils kind of start doing nurturing really well, and they get lots and lots of people through the door to apply and start assessment. So it's really something that we recommend. Before I hand over to Dan to talk about nurturing via email, just a point really about search ads. You should always have search ads running, not just for like foster care fortnight or a period of a campaign or something like that. Every single day, no matter where you are in the country, someone will be searching for fostering information. If you don't get an ad in front of them and get the click, chances are it's going to go to an IFA instead. And like I say, you may never ever hear from them, and they'll end up being approved by an IFA. So it's a nurturing as well, via email particularly, is something to do continually. Always be speaking to people, keep yourself top of mind, and that sort of thing. And again, another thing to remember is there's loads of links in a recruitment chain. The bit here at the front, the marketing, the inquiry response, and so on, just one small part of it. Where all these links in the chain are strong, councils get loads more carers through the door. It's really easy to have loads and loads of strong links and then one that lets things down. So it's really important, like I say, get the front door right. That's the first thing to get right, but don't take your eye off the ball with anything else either. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Dan.
Thanks, John. Hi everyone, we'll just do a seamless switch of the presentation and hopefully you should be seeing my screen now.
Thanks, Dan. That's it.
Is that coming through? I'm really grateful to John and Leanne for giving me the opportunity to chat to you all today. My name's Dan. I work for a company called Forefront, but we run a digital comms platform called eShot, and we worked with Can for a long time. So what I'd like to do today, hopefully, is just point out some of the learnings that we've had from working with Can for a lot of councils on fostering recruitment, because there are things that work and there are things that don't work. And John's alluded already to the value of nurturing, and I would echo that 100%. People do not wake up this morning and decide to become a foster carer tomorrow. So you have to communicate with them in the long term. And that's very difficult to do manually. When most people think email, they tend to think newsletters. Oh, I have to manually put together an email and send it out to people. And that's very difficult to do manually, especially if you think about that fostering recruitment funnel, lots of people at different stages of the process. And on any given day, you need to send different messages to different people at different stages of the process. So that's where what we tend to do is we look at the other end of the kind of sophistication journey for using email for fostering recruitment, and we look to use automation, because I'm guessing none of you are going to sit there and tell me that you've got loads of extra time to do a whole bunch more work and loads of resources to throw at fostering as you see fit. We have to do more with less, and we're all being told that AI will replace our jobs. Don't worry about AI for today. What we will worry about though is automation, and really it's a question of looking at what works as opposed to what's popular. What I have often encountered for most councils is the comms team will get requests from services for a newsletter. Oh, we need to do email, therefore we need to do a newsletter. And I would question that logic. Is it actually going to help you achieve your objective? When I have examined newsletters, existing foster care newsletters for councils, I picked out some data from one that will remain nameless, but we examined who was in their council fostering newsletter audience, and the content of that newsletter was heavily focused on convincing people to become foster carers. However, the vast majority of people were not viable opportunities to create new foster carers. Actually, a lot of them were already foster carers, and indeed we found a lot of professionals working within the space were also subscribed. So you're there putting a lot of effort into sending out regular newsletters, but is it the right audience? So when you probably already have a fostering newsletter or some form of communication on that, one thing you might want to consider is just asking a simple question of letting you know what they're interested in is fostering. Because if you can just get a simple data point like that, then that is an insight that then you can then use to be more targeted with people. Now, as we also talked about, that kind of conventional funnel, it's far too soon to get people to do too much when they first become aware of fostering. When they're in that kind of early consideration stage, asking people for war and peace is really not going to work. So if we come away from newsletters and we look more at the use of automation for email nurture, the typical customer journey will be either a nice national campaign or something highly effective like an ad campaign from Can will drive attention and interest at your fostering landing page. Okay, and when they get there, they're going to be greeted by fantastic creative, good compelling stories, etc. I've had a look at a lot of fostering websites for a lot of councils, and generally speaking they are excellent and they've got the right content on them. However, we then hit that kind of, well, what do you do next? You get in touch and you're faced with something like this, a terrifying form, which warns you it's going to take you 2 minutes to complete and it's got 6 tabs. And hang on, I just saw an advert and I just wanted to know a little bit more. So, we have to think through this customer journey. And if someone is at the start of their journey to becoming a foster carer, then asking them for war and peace or their date of birth, as John pointed out, is probably a little bit premature. All we need really is an email address, and we can communicate with them and educate them on becoming a foster carer. So consider what who it is that's coming to those fostering landing pages and consider the stage they're at the journey and what you would like them to do next. If there is, it's not to say you shouldn't have the full inquiry form with someone asking to become a foster carer, but equally you probably need something which is a kind of earlier stage than that, which is just as simple, like John said, for the information pack or something else. Just give us your email address. That's all we need, and we can fulfill your request. And most importantly, you then have a lead which you've captured, which you can then do more things with. And this is the trick for doing email and automation well. At every stage of the pipeline, there should be something appropriate to communicate to the people who are looking at your fostering content. So I'm not sure if the chat's actually working on the meeting, but can anyone tell me who this handsome fellow is? Is the chat working? I couldn't put anything in the chat just now, Leanne.
Oh, chat should be working, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anyone? Okay, tough crowd. Maybe this will give you more of a clue. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Sir Isaac Newton. Okay, so the gravity of the situation in fostering is quite often the opposite, or the reaction to what someone does is not equal and proportionate. Okay, and that works from that, manifests itself with things like the one I've already mentioned, whereby someone has a passing level of awareness of fostering, and they come to your website and they're greeted with a big terrifying form that it's far too soon for them to fill in. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you do have people who come to those websites who are genuinely interested, and those inquiries need to remain the responsibility of the comms function as well. And this is why. This is an example of a landing page for another council that I worked on a couple of years ago now, and they spent money on pay-per-click to drive people to this page, and that was incredibly successful. So successful that 180 plus people filled in, having gone through this massive landing page, this quite detailed form. Okay, so people will do it if they're at that relevant stage of the process. However, there was then a big disconnect, because all that was happening then is notifications were going into the service to follow up with these people, and they were trying to call them back and not reaching them, and sending them manual emails that were going unanswered, because again, it was just one of those kind of things where there was a bit of a disconnect between what someone was expecting and what actually happened. What we found when we examined the kind of response there was, people were filling in the form, but it was taking the service the best part of a week to even follow up on inquiries, because the ad generated so many. So all we did in that situation was we introduced what's known as an autoresponder, the equal and opposite reaction. When you fill in our form and ask about becoming a foster carer, we're going to tell you about what's going to happen next. Okay, so there is the service providing the actual follow-up, but the comms team alongside that are providing a kind of guide to what's going to happen next. And lo and behold, we saw, when we just put that simple autoresponder in, 80% engagement in those emails in follow-up to the inquiries. And this is something which manifests itself consistently through the various different forms of marketing that we do for fostering. Another very common practice is to have fostering events. And again, this is a fantastic opportunity for data capture. So if someone is interested in becoming a foster carer and wants to drop in or come to an event, then again, offering them, the Sir Isaac Newton principle again, the equal and opposite reaction. Great, you want to come to our event? Stick in your email address, and we're going to send you the detail. We're going to tell you where it is, when it is. We're going to remind you, 24 hours before. If you want to take a mobile number as well, we can also send them a text message giving them directions to find the venue, things like that. So again, it's always these equal and opposite reactions to the stage in the process where people are at. Okay, so think about what's going to happen when the government launch that big campaign and people are going to come to your page. How are you going to facilitate those kind of people at an early stage? Oh, yeah, I'm quite interested in this. What are they going to find there for them to kind of get a little bit of information, and indeed for those who are further down the journey, what are they going to find, and how are you going to ensure that the process of the service actually working with them is going to be supported? Okay. And John mentioned the IFAs extensively because we see them doing this stuff already. So let's say at the far end of the email sophistication spectrum, we have automation. And what I can tell you is, they're doing it, as John says, because it's providing an ROI. So when you put in an email address, they start to automatically email you. Okay. And those emails do actually tend to be quite simple. The other nice thing is they also tend to be based on content that you already have. So rather than having to kind of create new assets, it really is a question of breaking down your existing fostering website content and putting it into emails and then giving it some structure. Okay, so beyond the concept of an autoresponder, when someone registers for a fostering newsletter, we send them a welcome email. When someone registers for a fostering event, we send them an event confirmation. We also have a situation where somebody says, when I'm interested in finding out more about foster care, we can start to take them on a journey. Okay, and that's what we refer to as a welcome series. Okay, and in this example, I've just illustrated the kind of content that might be in the first 3 emails in that sequence. Okay, take them on their journey. All right, now the other thing with that is you can use that content to start to prioritize where people are in the funnel. Okay, so we talked about obviously people being at different stages, and you might not necessarily be aware of what that stage is. Obviously, if they fill in the big form, then that might be an indication that they are, further down the funnel than you might have otherwise realized. But the other thing is there are certain types of content that tend to indicate someone is seriously interested. Okay, so we have things like case studies. Hopefully you've all got foster care case studies as well. That's high value content, because unless someone was seriously interested, why would they be reading case study content? Information about the support that's available for becoming a foster carer, again, is an example of high value content that if we can nurture these people, all you've done is you've looked at an ad and you've come to our website and we've just asked you for an email address, and that's all we need to then start sending you a sequence of emails which are all pre-programmed. But in that sequence of emails, there will be certain high value content that if you interact with that content, it says to us, this is someone that perhaps the service should follow up with, should engage with, should try and convert to becoming a full inquiry. Because that 3 to 5 year journey that John mentioned, it's not linear, and it's certainly not consistent where everybody takes the exact same amount of time. What I can tell you as a universal truth is, nobody, let's say, wakes up today and becomes a foster carer tomorrow. But whether it's 3 months or 6 months or a year and a half is a difficult thing to predict. So that's where, when you are nurturing contacts, you need to have those signals to be able to go, okay, we've been nurturing this contact for a long time, but because we can see a certain set of behaviors where they've interacted with certain pieces of content, we know that's someone that we can prioritize from a pipeline perspective. Okay, and that can be incredibly effective. I say, you have those, I'm sure you have those stories already. Send out those narratives. And when we think back to things like your fostering newsletter, if you do find that your audience is predominantly your existing foster carers, then rather than using the newsletter as a vehicle to encourage people to become a foster carer, use the newsletter as a vehicle to encourage those who are already foster carers to share their stories. Organically produce content. If you can get people to share your stories, or indeed share their own stories, then that's going to be highly effective again in convincing others just like them that they should perhaps consider becoming foster carers as well. And as I say, this is something we've worked on with CAN for a lot of councils now, turning fantastic website content into carefully structured, cleverly controlled narratives, using modern digital formats like video. No harm in having videos embedded in emails to try and drive people to firstly find out more about fostering, but then digitally hand raise, do something which indicates to you that they're seriously interested in becoming a foster carer. Okay, so what we see when we run these campaigns is the engagement rates are off the scale. Okay, so you're I get asked all the time, what's a good newsletter open rate? I don't care. What I want to see is I want to see conversion. I want to see people who are taking that journey and converting into foster carers from those nurture sequences. But as I say, this is not something you can do manually. It's really a question of taking your existing website content, putting it into some sort of structure, deciding whether it's 6 months worth of emails or a year's worth of emails, whatever it might be. You don't have to have 15 articles in each email as well. If you think back to those IFA examples, a single piece of content per email, and then putting together in a structured sequence that it just runs. Someone puts their email address in and the machine then starts emailing them. Okay, so if you keep on doing what you're doing, you'll keep on getting what you're getting. As I've seen time and again, a lot of people, email is an incredibly useful channel in foster care recruitment, but the way in which a lot of councils tend to use it tends to be quite basic, nothing beyond a newsletter. What I would encourage you to do is think about ways in which you can do things slightly differently to get a different result. And as you might expect, we've got lots of examples that we can share with you and experience in this domain in partnership with CAN that we'd love to share with you afterwards. The chat's still not working for me, but what I'll ask Leanne to do as well, we have a little marketing automation demo website which has got automation demos for lots of different council services, but there is a dedicated fostering session in there, fostering sector in there, which has got lots of examples of best practice emails and nurture sequences for fostering as well. So I hope that's been useful. I just wanted to kind of give you that insight. Nurturing people long-term via email is a proven way to ensure that your investment in things like pay-per-click, investment in search, driving people to fostering landing pages, that's the most effective way I know to then ensure that those people stick with you and become foster carers in the long term. I'm really, really grateful for you listening to me today. Let's say eShot is a digital engagement platform. We are trusted by a myriad of public sector organisations to do all sorts of fun stuff, beyond fostering recruitment. But I'm really grateful for you taking the time to listen to me today. Back to you, Leanne.
Thanks so much, Dan. And I think that from me, it's in these times where there's absolutely no money around and we're having to show our workings, these are the kind of tools really that teams need for reporting up to SMT, to showing progress, showing how you are performing. And I think for me, the use of direct email is just like underused, and it's such a powerful tool. And I think in combination with the use of digital advertising in the first place to get awareness and to get the user experience right, this part of the puzzle I think is probably worth the effort and worth the investment. I think it can feel sometimes a little bit overwhelming, the thought of adding in another process, but I think short-term pain is long-term gain with this, any kind of recruitment really. And we work with other public sector organisations on other recruitment campaigns that can, and this end-to-end process we feel is like massively important, and this being part of it really. And just when folk have got no time to do this like manually, no one's got time to do this manually, to nurture in a digital way. So I think that was just, very useful part of the puzzle. Thanks, Dan, for showing that. And I will, sorry, I don't know what's happening where you can't put in chat, but it might be because you're a presenter, but I can share I can share it after the event, after this webinar, the wee link to the demo, and that will be super useful for folk as well, I think. That is all we've got in terms of content today. I just want to give a chance. This group is quite quiet normally, and the webinar is quite quiet for questions. If anybody does want to ask a question, put it in the chat, put your hand up, come off mute, come off camera, whatever you're comfortable to do, and ask us. We have an in-person sort of community of practice event with the major focus more of the same really next week in Glasgow. again, we'll be going through in more detail with folk in the room, just sort of talking about the end-to-end process with the context of the national campaign coming up, what you can do at a local level. I think what Dan was covering there in terms of like how you can use clips from the national campaign, start thinking about how you can use content for the national campaign. At Cannes, we've rolled out a film, a similar film, yearly for the last, I think, 3 years. John will put me right. Where councils buy into a film basically, and then they've used the assets from the film to actually do exactly what Dan has said, that via direct email to keep the nurturing warm. Everybody, you know, like looking at content like that, we all know video is really, really engaging. We know that when we place video on your ads, when like for the folk that we are looking after in Scotland at the moment, the video engagement and like the algorithms and what they prefer, it's very much video. I mean, it's night and day in terms of engagement and what they'll actually, you know, sort of show across the platforms, because that's how it works, and that's the world that we're living in. I think moving to content that's content designed, that's accessible, that everyone can actually access, is another massive plus. We have to make it as easy as possible, because folk are used to now receiving information from whatever they're looking at in this way, you know. So I think it's time to sort of look at being super professional with your direct email comms. It's like I say, massively powerful tool if it's used well. I think we've covered what we were asked to cover. I know that policy team at Scottish Government had been by the group for the readiness to cover, you know, at a local level, how to make the most of it. If there's anything you wanted to hear about, or we're hands tied a little bit without knowing what channels it's going to be used, we could give sort of more detailed information if and when we have that information. But in a general sense, I think looking at, right, you've got this content, you've got this information, and I think from what the sound of it, the film sounds like the themes will be really good and they'll be useful, but then it's capitalizing on that content at a local level to make the most of the attention basically, and that awareness piece, and then making it and converting it into leads then, and keeping them warm via the next bit of the process. I'll do one last shout out for any hands up or any questions in the chat, or feel free to come to us, John and I. We're super happy to have individual conversations with teams to help you with search, help you with digital advertising, link you with eShot. Can use eShot as our own email platform. Trust and really like them, especially for me. They have excellent accessibility things baked into the platforms, which I really appreciate. Right, Ewan's got a question. I'm just going to come to that. So I don't know Ewan, and I wish I knew that question. I wish I knew what the answer was to that question, because what I will say though, it'll be a national campaign, and it will be the Google ads will be pointing to the landing page. You want to be looking at your local offer there, so it'll be totally different. So I wouldn't hold off at all. I would absolutely amplify at a local level. Would be my answer to your question, Ewan. Give me a shout if there's anything that's not clear there. Thanks, Karen. All right, well, I'll give you 5 minutes for a cup of tea, probably before your 3 o'clock. For those who are coming to Glasgow next week, I'm going to put a question out to ask for your questions in advance of the meeting or the session or the workshop, so that it is useful for everybody coming along. We'll have ideas about how to structure it. Again, it'll be majorly informal. It's just a community of practice with a focus on digital, just so you get a chance to actually see each other and learn from each other and where you are in use of digital for foster care recruitment. So for those who are coming are on the call today, we really looking forward to seeing you and giving you some lunch. Yes, please, John.
Brilliant. So yeah, just reiterating the event in Glasgow. If you've not had an invite to this, those are the dates. That's the date, sorry, and the times. So it's for anyone involved in fostering recruitment. As Leanne said, it's about sharing knowledge, best practice, and using digital tools. Scottish Government will be there, so you can speak with them about the national campaign. Will be free lunch as well. It's May Day too, so Glasgow will be pretty busy. So it'll be a nice day. Great to meet people in person. And also, if you've got any sort of questions about anything to do with fostering recruitment, we're more than happy to have a chat and help. You know, between us, we've got a lot of experience in this area. Loads of like examples of what's worked at other councils, what hasn't worked at other councils. There's loads of things that like challenges that councils have in common when it comes to fostering recruitment. So there's very rarely something comes up that a problem that hasn't been solved already. So just drop us an email. Like I say, if you want to invite to the Glasgow event or ask us anything, really, we're more than happy to have a chat.
All right. And I think for the community of practice stuff and the in-person stuff, we are quite keen. I know that there's other events connected to the promise that I've been to personally, but our focus is on use of digital, effective use of digital. So really this community is for foster care recruitment with a sort of quite a focus on that, really for that. Thanks, Alison. We'll close there. The session's been recorded. We will get this over to everybody in the group. Thanks to Dan for your presentation and for that information, and we'll link in the demo as I mentioned, so you can have a look and see what they've done elsewhere. So have a good afternoon and thanks for joining and for your time today.
Thanks all.